So the view from my back patio is that brick wall, and I'm just not a fan. So I'm gonna give it a little bit of a decorative element that's gonna be both multifunctional, because it's gonna be a decorative piece, it's gonna hold my projector screen for my outdoor movie theater, and it's gonna be a vertical herb garden to grow some herbs and peppers in my backyard. So let's get to building. So like most outdoor projects, we start with some good old-fashioned manual labor. Get out the shovel and dig a few holes. And personally, I like to fill the hole about a third full of water, because as it gets absorbed into the ground, it'll just naturally compact the loose dirt. Once I have my pieces all cut, I'm going to put pocket holes into the two pieces that are going to go at the bottom of the frame as braces. And I'm also going to pre-drill the ends of the long 2x4 I'm using for the top of my frame. Just like that, it's time to assemble a frame. It's pretty self-explanatory here. I'm putting two 2.5-inch screws into all the points where the lumber meets. The only thing to really point out is that I'm assembling it upside down, meaning the front of the frame is actually on the concrete. I'm doing this because the lumber isn't perfect, and I'd like the front of the frame to be as flat as possible later for the pattern I'm going to make. And there we have it. We're practically done, right? No, we're not, but it's a start. So to make our chevron-esque pattern, we're going to use this conveniently marked 31.6 degree angle on my miter saw. And then we're just going to cut a whole bunch of 5.5-inch wide cedar pickets. I had 22 pickets on hand to make this, and I used some cutoffs to make the smaller pieces, so I did have a couple left over. I've laid out all the longest pieces, but now we need some spacers. Problem solved. I start from the midpoint at the bottom, I use my spacers, and I shoot 2-inch brad nails to secure the pickets to the posts. To trim off the excess, I use a circular saw to cut along the edge of the post. Now in hindsight, I either should have clamped a straight edge as a guide, or just marked each piece and cut it on the miter saw, as this worked, but it wasn't as clean as I was hoping. So in true DIYer fashion, I discovered something that didn't work well, learned from it, and made a better decision. And there we have it. The decorative screen is built. Now we just gotta move this thing into its final home. For setting posts like this, I always use fast set concrete. Most people I've seen just dump the bag of concrete into the hole and then soak it with a hose. But for me, to ensure all the concrete powder is exposed to water thoroughly, what I like to do is actually put water in the hole first, dump in my concrete, and then I spray any extra water needed on top to finish it off. So it only takes a few minutes for the concrete to set enough that it holds the post in place. So you could set up a brace if you wanted to, or be like me and just hold it in place and every once in a while check and make sure that it's still plumb. Now to waterproof the whole build, I'm going to use Behr Cedar Naturaltone. That'll give it its final look and color. I'm using a 3-inch brush to apply it. And a little pro tip for you, you definitely want to do 2 coats of this stuff so that you get a nice even color. And if you get any drips anywhere, make sure you brush it immediately. If this stuff pools or just sits for too long in one spot, it'll leave a dark spot that you don't want. And with our decorative screen set in place, now we turn to the vertical herb garden that's going to flank each side of it. The frame is pretty straightforward. I'm cutting 4 redwood 2x4s to 23 inches for the top and bottom, another 4 to 56 inches because I want this to be a total of 59 inches tall. That's just the size that it ended up working out to be for my build. Obviously, change it for yours if you want. And to take off the factory edges of the 2x4, I'm using a joiner because I have one. You could also use a table saw or a circular saw, or just don't do it at all and have slightly rounded edges. It'll still look good regardless of what you do. I like to countersink my screws slightly, so on my top and bottom pieces, I'm using a 3/8 inch bit to make a recess about 1/4 inch deep. Then I come in with my 1/8 inch bit to pre-drill the remainder of the way through. As for pre-drilling, if you don't know, it really helps prevent your wood from splitting when you drive in the screws. At this point, again, the assembly is pretty straightforward. I'm using 2.5 inch outdoor wood screws to secure everything in place. And for the back of my vertical garden, I'm using 8-foot long square top redwood fence pickets, and I'm cutting them down to 24 inches as a rough cut to start. Now I'm using these instead of cedar pickets because at 8 feet long, I can get all the pieces I need from 6 boards, and these are thicker than the cedar pickets, which will be great for the planter mounts that I'm going to use later. Now while I lay these out, let me be transparent here. I did smooth out the face of the boards with my planer, and I squared up the edges with my joiner. You may or may not have access to these tools, and if you don't, you can either leave the face of the boards rough or use something like a 60 grit sandpaper with an orbital sander to get a similar result. It's just going to take a while. And then for squaring up the edges, again, there are other options using something like a table saw or a circular saw to achieve that, or just leave it alone. If you do leave it alone, I do recommend put a little bit of a space in between each of your boards because the natural shrinkage and expansion of the boards are going to create some awkward gaps if you don't leave some sort of a space for them to fit into. With the boards all laid out, I'm going to place my frame down and I'll just mark where I need to cut so that everything lines up on the edges perfectly. Oh, and you'll see here I'm numbering each board on the cutoff piece so that I keep things in order. Then it's just a matter of cutting on the lines and then transferring the number to the back of the board at this point, just to again keep things in order. I use a circular saw to cut the top and bottom pieces lengthwise, apply Behr Cedar Naturaltone weatherproofer, paint my frame with exterior grade paint, lay the planks in place, pre-drill, and screw in with 1 5/8 inch screws. Oh, and I'm using screws instead of brad nails because these will be holding a little bit of weight later with the planter pots. To attach the vertical planters, I'm going to pre-drill and then use 3-inch screws to secure it to the 2x4 of the main structure. For the final touches, I'm using these Terra Latch pot hangers, which are a really easy way to mount pots on vertical gardens like this. Then it's just a couple screws for my projector screen to hang on, and some touch-up paint to finish the build. And for the grand finale, I'm using Miracle-Gro moisture control potting soil to transplant my herbs and pepper plants into their new homes. I really like using this soil because it gives my plants all the nutrients that they want and need, and it's really great for me because it helps me from overwatering or underwatering my plants. Then I just top it off by feeding my plants the Miracle-Gro water-soluble vegetable and herb plant food. And then my plants are ready to sit back and enjoy the summer. And a huge thank you to Home Depot and Scott's Miracle-Gro for sponsoring this project. If you missed it, in the springtime I did this cool little outdoor coffee table with a planter in the middle. That was sponsored by them as well. This is my summer project and I got one more to go for the fall, so stay tuned for that one. And if you want to see this thing in action, follow me on Instagram. It's @MadeByDanger. I'll see you on the next one. And now we're ready for movie night.